Venezuela's interior minister urged its citizens to remain calm after U.S. airstrikes targeted the South American nation overnight. Interior Minister Caballo emphasized the country's population was organized and ready after an operation was carried out in conjunction with U.S. law enforcement. President Maduro was captured by elite Special Forces troops. With me now is retired Major General Scott Clancy, former Director of Operations for NORAD. Major General, welcome. Your initial reaction to this development. Does the U.S. have the legal authority to do this?
So, in accordance with the international law, no, they do not. They are using the self-defense rationale within non-international armed conflict portion of the laws of armed conflict to justify taking out the head of a supposed cartel. That's a real problem because you have to prove that you're under an armed attack. And these terrorist organizations, although we call them terrorist organizations, yes, they're eliciting terror on the streets because of the trafficking of drugs, but that's not an armed attack. And that's why the legal basis of this is a little bit flimsy. That being said, Maduro's a bad guy. He is significantly killing people within his own country, maintaining power, using the illicit elements of military and police power to do so. People disappear in the streets. There's arrests without warrant. All of these things that go to, it's an illicit regime. None of that, however, justifies legally taking out the head of state of another nation.
In going after Maduro, Trump is taking aim at a close ally of Russia and China. Is this Trump sending a message to those countries?
Oh, yes. I mean, we could go right back to the Monroe Doctrine of decades ago and say that the United States is reestablishing itself within its own hemisphere, within its own sphere of influence. You know, yesterday, Maduro met with the special envoy from China on Latin America and the Caribbean affairs. So amidst a very high-profile meeting, you know, within hours, you have this removal. Russia has been very clear, warning in the early hours of today about escalation within the area. This is the Trump administration exerting its control and influence over the region, and it's doing so not really using proper justifications. In terms of drugs, very little drugs actually come out of Venezuela. And even smaller amounts are produced within Venezuela. They're coming across the border from Colombia, not from the Colombian regime, which is in a 30-year war with the FARC and ELN. It's actually coming out of the rebels. Majority of drugs coming in the United States is coming out of Mexico, Honduras, and Guatemala. The cartels there, the Sinaloan cartel, amongst others, are using these trafficking elements out of Venezuela, very small amounts.
Could this affect any negotiations on that U.S.-backed peace plan for Russia and Ukraine, with Trump now having gone after a friend of Russia?
So everything's always interlinked. From a diplomatic point of view, you wonder what one thing affects the other. I'm of the personal opinion that Vladimir Putin is under no real constraints as it pertains to the peace accords within Ukraine. He's winning the war there. He's using and flouting blatant lies like the attack on his residence in order to stave off the peace process because he knows he's winning. China's industrial capability and India's purchase of some of their oil has made their war of attrition in Ukraine very plausible. Therefore, operations like this one in Venezuela just provide a little bit more smoke and mirrors on top of the international sphere to what they're doing in the peace process. But I don't think it's going to fundamentally change anything.
It was only just yesterday that Maduro indicated he was willing to negotiate with the U.S. Do you think that played a factor in the timing of today's strikes?
No, short answer, no. The United States has been moving in this direction for quite some time. I mean, 2020 was the indictment of Maduro and his regime. That's a bunch of years ago. They've been sanctioning whether it's the Chavez regime, the Maduro regime in Venezuela, since Barack Obama was president of the United States. So this has been a long-going affair with respect to trying to get democracy push back into Venezuela and try to counter the very autocratic regimes and the Chavezism that is around, or Chavismo as they call it, that it is in Venezuela. But there's a lot going on here. Venezuela has the largest oil resources and tap oil resources in the world. That's the significant power initiative here that Donald Trump is after. If he can get a democratic nation in his sphere of influence, if the people can rise up, which there is no indication that they're going to do. Venezuela, Caracas, the capital, is quiet this morning. And we've heard from the three leaders. The VP, Rodriguez, has spoken publicly, as has the Minister of Defense and the Minister of Interior. Those are the three at the top of those power controls there. They've all spoken out. They're showing a unified presence there. I don't think we're going to see any reaction soon, because popular uprising was the best outcome for the American administration here.
A flood of reaction to this coming in from international leaders. Do you see Mark Carney responding?
I think Mark Carney has to respond. I think he's going to be very tempered as pertaining to his response because of the nature of relations between Canada and the United States, because of the lack of an economic agreement here. Everything is kind of walking a tightrope, and you saw that with the UK Prime Minister, his comments. You know, we support the rules-based order and international law. However, let's just look at the facts and see this, because nobody wants to upset the President of the United States, because they know that a direct response to that is going to be negative with respect to economic relations with their country. The reality here is that you have a bad leader doing very bad things, and the United States military, under the direction of the United States president, has acted to remove him. The legalities of this become very interesting, because then you go, well, the war against Saddam Hussein, you can use the president of Syria, you know, all of these autocratic leaders. Are we okay to go in and just remove them? Or is the general good done with removing them? Oh, we're into very, very tempered ground here. But the reality for the Venezuelan people is that hopefully they can move forward. Hopefully there can be more, plural state that's created on the tail end here. But I think that oil is the real motivator behind all of this.
Major General, thank you very much for being here with us today. That is retired Major General Scott Clancy, former Director of Operations for NORAD, speaking with us as we continue to follow this developing story.